Hi, it's Jan Beta, and today I am going to build a replica of the fabled Competition Pro joystick. A while back I made this monstrosity, which is a DIY joystick made from arcade, cheaply made arcade-like replica parts. And this is just a standard DB9 Atari style joystick. I added a little autofire circuit. Some people got inspired by my build videos building this thing. And one of them was Christian, and he wanted to make a replica of the Competition Pro, which is the classic joystick you probably know, or at least have heard of. Very nice joystick, one of the most common models for a reason, because it is a really good joystick. And Christian contacted me via email. I actually sent him one Competition Pro to get the measurements, and he wanted to build an enclosure that has the measurements of a Competition Pro joystick and that fits one of these cheap arcade replica parts. And this is the result that he sent me, and I'm going to try to put it all together today. This is a pretty sophisticated construction consisting of a number of parts that we have to put together. We have to modify this a bit because clearly this doesn't fit the enclosure like this with this metal plate and things like that. I'm going to link these joysticks in the video description, and also this model, this 3D print model, is available on Thingiverse, thankfully, so you can make your own if you feel like it. These are not very expensive, so yeah, very much worth tinkering with, and it's pretty straightforward to just wire these up to a used joystick cable, which I have here, which has the DB9 connector. DE9 really, not DB9, as I often wrongly say. Sorry about that. We need the stick, and we need some buttons to fit our enclosure here. I'm going to go with black buttons and a black ball on top here. You can also get these in all kinds of different colors. We're going to modify this and wire everything up, and ideally we should have something that resembles this in the end. So let's do it. Christian also sent me this instruction sheet, which is pretty straightforward, so it shouldn't be much effort, but as you probably know, these builds can go south pretty quickly if you do something wrong. So I'm going to follow the instructions. First thing is going to remove the metal plate from the joystick construction here. By the way, this is a different, slightly different one than the one I used in the other build. This has a connector here for connecting the micro switches, which are not, they are connected to a PCB. On this one, you don't have to connect wires directly to the micro switches as with the other one. So first things first, we're going to remove this metal plate, and we're going to have to cut these little tabs on the side here to fit this in here. Actually, the Competition Pro is one of my all-time favorite joysticks. I used Competition Pros almost exclusively back in the day, and there are a number of different variants of those. Some of those have micro switches, some of them have leaf switches, the earlier models. Some of them come with an autofire circuit, you name it. And then there's also the zip stick, which is like the successor to the Competition Pro. It's a bit better even, and also has autofire. This is going to feel different from a Competition Pro because the action on these is a bit different, and the stick is a little bit shorter, which I don't mind because the Competition Pro stick always feels a bit long to me. But yeah, we're going to see. So we need to cut these. I think I'm going to try to use some pliers for that, some snips. Should be able to remove these, I guess. Yeah, maybe I'm going to use a saw. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with a saw. So down. And there goes the other one. So I cut these tabs off, and it should fit in this thing here, which it does. The next step is going to fit this orange part on top of this enclosure part, and we're going to use M3 screws for that, which should fit in here. Yeah, they do. And we need some M3 nuts on the other side, obviously. So yeah, I think these screws should screw in from the bottom of this plate, and then we can have our little nuts in here in these. That's not very clear from the instructions, but I could have paid a bit of attention and it would have been apparent. Yeah, and then we put this piece on here, and the screws go in from the bottom actually. So we have some, let's see, do we have some nice flathead M3s that fit in there? Yeah, that makes way more sense. Okay. So yeah, these actually screw in from the bottom, and I put some nuts in these indentations here, so I can use the upper indentation for the upper screw that we're going to screw this on with, and yeah, the lower one for the screw that goes through here. Not. I still don't have a 3D printer, so I'm not used to this kind of construction at all. But this kind of makes more sense than what I did previously. Now I get it. Yeah, okay, that's better. And now the next step is to put this in here, I guess. And there's little indentations for nuts again. So we need more M3 screws, short ones, and M3 nuts. So there's a little pocket for an M3 nut, and we just push them in there so the screw hole aligns with the hole in the plastic. And then we can just use these nuts to fasten this part in there. I think we should put this in here in a way so that we can still reach our cables there. Yeah, look at that. Okay, so this now screws down with some shorter M3 screws. Okay, that turned out pretty nicely. At this point, I think I want to drill this hole for mounting my joystick cable, which I salvaged from another joystick, I don't remember. I think this is the first one I used for my metal joystick build and replaced with one that has more wires. But yeah, I'm going to use this in this build, and I'm going to have to drill a hole to fit this in here. And there's a little pre-drilled hole in here that I'm going to widen with a drill bit, metal drill bit. And for strain relief, there's a couple of pre-drilled holes here, so you can do some cable management inside, I think, which I'm not sure if that's necessary, but we're going to see if we can fit our cable in here at all, which has a strain relief on it. But we're going to have to cut this again a tiny little bit because I kind of mutilated this cable. when I used it for my other build. Yep. Like that. And then I'm going to cable tie this in place in here, I think, which should be enough to make this sturdy. And we're going to use this cable, which came with the joystick, to connect our directions, and we're going to fit our joystick buttons at this point. So the buttons should just fit in these holes, and I'm going to put the little contacts diagonal facing towards the stick, because there's more room to connect stuff to. Probably just going to solder directly to those contacts. That's pretty nice, actually. They fit very well. Yeah, and now we have our contacts in reach here. This goes on here and holds in place nicely. And we only need relatively short wires, so I'm going to clip this like around here. And if we screw it up, we have another side of this to replace this one, just in case. And of course we have to determine which direction is which and wire it up accordingly. And we should have one ground connection on the directional stick here that I already determined to be this wire, which is the one on the bottom from this angle. This is our ground. Now it's just a matter of wiring this stuff up and solder it according to our joystick pinout, which I already have nicely printed out here, even with the colors from this cable, the color coding on here. So all we have to do is to measure which direction is which wire here and solder them accordingly. And I'm going to use some nice heat shrink tubing to affix everything in place, and probably some cable ties. I'm going to tin these and strip the insulation from these before I put this in the case again, and then it's going to be much easier to solder to. I'm going to have to figure out the directions. The pin out of our connector there. Going to strip these. For our buttons, we have to have one ground connection on each button, of course. So we're going to connect some grounds together. But everyone is getting a bit of solder. And as for the buttons, they have two connections each. It doesn't matter which one you choose to be ground, but each one of them should have one ground connection, and then these are going to be closed when you push the button. We should have our ground on the black wire, I think, if I remember correctly. Black, yes. First of all, this should go in here. It's a pretty tight fit, which is good, because we don't want this to accidentally pull out. So there's not a lot of room here to solder, but I think it should be totally manageable. I'm going to tin the connections on the buttons as well. So we're just making a ground connection. This is ground. And for the other one, we're just going to connect all the grounds together, I guess. That's ground, and that's another ground. So all the grounds connected. So that's our grounds connected to this one pin. I'm going to be careful with the heat gun, because the plastic is 3D print PLA. It's going to melt easily. Yeah, I connected all the grounds to this pin on here, on this button. So that's where all our ground connections go through now. And for the rest of the connections, I'm going to use my multimeter to measure where they go against ground. So they should close the connection to ground for each direction. And of course we need to connect the fire buttons to the fire pin as well, which is the orange wire. So I connected my ground pin and I'm going to see where this one connects. Left. It's left. First one I tried. So this is left, which is our green wire. So this should go on to this one. And then I'm going to go through each and every wire here and connect them accordingly. Yep. All right. Up. And the last one should be down. Yep. Which is the blue wire. And then we need our fire buttons to be connected to the orange wire. At this point I'm going to give this a quick test run using my Amiga 600 that I grabbed quickly. And we should have at least some Turrican or something. Left, right, fire, other fire, up, down. Yep, everything seems to work fine. I'm not going to be able to play reasonably well like this, but just to determine that our wiring is correct. Actually feels quite good already. Finishing touches on the joystick, I guess. Yeah, I wired the other pin on the buttons, both together to the orange wire on this wire here. I'm going to add some cable ties to hold this thing in place, and I'm going to cable tie down the other connections there. Tiny little bit. I don't think I need any other strain relief, I think. Yeah, that's not going anywhere. I added 3 cable ties and 1 to hold this thing in the hole here, which should be plenty to hold it in place. Okay, so that's that. Now to add this thing here, we're going the same route as before with the nuts put into these indentations here and screwing down some screws on top. It works rather well. Wow, and this has a really short throw now, which technically isn't that bad. Yeah, that's on there. It's super flat. Let's add the bowl. So this just screws on top here, I think. Feels good. Okay, the bottom plate. Oh, okay. Yeah, this clips in here pretty tightly. And I think we need some self-cutting screws here, although it already holds in place pretty nicely, clipping in. I'm going to find myself some screws for that. Yeah, I suppose you could use like flat countersunk screws for this, but I'm going to add some rubber feet, so I'm just using these self-tappers. You could also glue in some nuts from the other side and use machine screws, but self-tappers are good, and I'm going to use some adhesive rubber feet to put on here so the screws don't hit the surface you mount this on or you play with this on. That's my solution, my workaround, because I don't have proper screws for this part. So I'm going to add some adhesive rubber feet to this. These are just 3M standard rubber feet. Ideally, they would go over the screws, I guess. But yeah, this feels pretty nice, actually. Cool. And apparently, they are not that different. Obviously, there are some workarounds. So this is a bit higher, the whole case of it. And the stick is a bit shorter. But this part here on top feels very similar to the Competition Pro, which has a way longer stick. The buttons are in the position that they're supposed to go, and it's pretty close to the original dimensions. So yeah, it feels pretty good actually. And it feels like a super robust construction. And you can 3D print one of these yourself and buy a stick and some buttons. And have like a Competition Pro clone that might even feel better for some of you. It's a matter of taste if you want a longer stick or a shorter stick. All micro switches, pretty nice. You could easily add an auto-fire circuit to this. There's a bit of room in this, as you've seen. So maybe I'm going to go back to this and add my auto-fire circuit that I added to the bigger model that I made. But yeah, pretty happy with this. Thank you, Christian, for sending this and for making this openly available on Thingiverse. The links to everything you need to build this are in the video description, in case you feel inspired. Maybe you feel inspired to make your own 3D printed joystick even, or do something else with these arcade parts. It's pretty easy to wire these up to the classical joystick connectors. So yeah. Your imagination is the limit, and your skill set. Yeah, I think that's it for today. This feels pretty nice. I still need some time to get used to the shorter stick, because otherwise it feels very much like a Competition Pro. Feels a bit awkward at this point, but it works very well, and I can totally imagine this being one of my go-to joysticks in the future. Yeah, apologies for this being a shorter build video, but I still wanted to share this because I think it's a nice project. Hope to be back soon with a longer one that I'm already working on. Thank you very much for your time, for watching this. Thank you for your support on Patreon and on the channel memberships page and on Ko-fi and elsewhere. The links to that are in the video description. Should you feel the need to support me, I'm very grateful for every little bit of support. Hope to see you again on this channel sometime. I'm Jan Beta. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.